Hi, I'm Matt with Schematical, and today we're talking about event-driven architecture and how you can set it up on AWS. So recently I had some clients reach out with some problems, and I realized a tool at our disposal was event-driven architecture. Actually, I've been pushing it for years, but they finally opened up to the idea. So in this video, I'm going to use my pixel art network diagram / swim lane flowchart tool to give you guys some idea of what I'm talking about, what is event-driven architecture, and how you can implement it. So let's get to it. All right. Now let's imagine your customer is at the final step of checkout. You've already made sure the inventory was there before you offered to sell it to them. You already did the authorization with their bank account. You know they've got the money in the account. And you're basically sending the transaction key to finish sealing the deal. Customer sends a request with all that information to finish buying your product or widget all the way to your application layer, which then begins processing. It creates a record in RDS or whatever database you're using. But before you can respond to the customer, you have to send the client-side transaction ID to the server-side payment provider so they can finish confirming the payment and they confirm the transaction. But it's not time to respond yet. You still need to update your inventory tool to know that that inventory has been indeed purchased and is no longer available to other people. So you send that off. Meanwhile, your customer is sitting there waiting this whole time because there's no response. And you haven't even sent out the thank you email to the customer. So you go ahead and do that. Customer's still waiting this whole time for the response to finish. And let's say you do some other stuff like update your sales and reporting tools because you want to know that sales were made. At that point, it's time to finally finish and respond. Hopefully your customer hasn't closed the tab because they think it's been loading for 5 minutes. And evidently they got bored and start looking up CAC pics. Now a common solution that I see people use is what's called polling. And I'll give you an example of what that is. And I wouldn't recommend using that, but let me show you. Polling is where you constantly refresh the database or call the database to say, are there new records? Let me give you a little demonstration. So in this example, we have a service worker. We figured out that we don't want to do it inline here in the application server, so we want to do those extra pieces of work at the service worker layer. So we go ahead and hit play there, and it queries the database. Are there any new sales or whatever created? If so, sure, it responds great, it goes about its business, but let's just imagine that it finishes that and now it asks again, hey, are there any new records? In which case we add a little bit extra load to the database. Maybe it starts to buckle under the pressure, so that responds with any new records. Let's say it doesn't. So again, a couple minutes or seconds go by, it queries, says, hey, anything new? It's adding even more load to the database, slowing it down further for the request from other services. And then we can see it adds even more load right there. Database starts to slow down because we've got all these workers querying it. It's never just one worker. There's always a bunch of them for some reason. Eventually, it bursts into flames. The database, that is. So we don't want to add extra load to the database by asking it all the time, hey, is there something new? Is there something new? Is there something new? So again, this is another problem that event-driven architecture solves. So that's one way of doing it. That is in series. I don't even think I'm going to call it architecture, but that is just doing everything in series. Takes a long time. I wouldn't recommend it. So let's take a look at what that would look like if we added some event-driven architecture in there. And I've got a couple layers here, but we'll go through the easiest one first. All right, now let's imagine another flow where we inject SQS into it. That's Simple Queue Service. You could use something else like RabbitMQ or whatever, but AWS's base solution, the most basic queue they've got that is really powerful, is SQS. I strongly advise this for rapid fire stuff if you need to move really fast. You've got your customer over here. They go ahead and they finalize a purchase and they send the transaction ID they got client side to the application server. That then saves a record to the DB. Now, this is important. If you're using something like MySQL and it's going to assign you an ID, then this is key. If you're using something like DynamoDB and you can pre-populate what the ID will be, then you wouldn't have to go and get the ID first. But for this scenario, we're just going to pretend like we got to get an ID from MySQL, and we're going to send that ID around to be consumed by other things. So we need that ID. And again, if you pre-populate it, if you can come up with a unique ID and know that's where the record's going to be at, then you won't have to reach out to the database first, which is awesome because it'll speed up things. So that holds on to the event that was created. The event will look probably something like event type, sale made, and then have a second field of like data, and then that'll be the record data, all the fields you just saved to MySQL there. After that, you can see SQS then says, yeah, I've received the event. It tells the application server we're good. So then the application server can jump right into responding to the user. No waiting around for the emails to send and the inventory to update and etc., which means the user can get busy waiting for their package to arrive. In which case, let's just say we've got this product service worker over here. And it says I've got a Lambda icon on there, but in reality it can be anything. I just haven't made too many. I need to make more icons for this thing. By the way, the software we're using right now, I'm basically writing as you're watching this almost. So bear with me. So either way, that has the event in there, and the event can be consumed once and only once. That's an important distinction we need to make because that'll come into play later on. But basically, you could do a FIFO, first in, first out, or consume in any which direction. So let's just assume we're doing a first in, first out, which means the first event to come in will be the first one consumed. So they're consumed in a very specific order. That's a very important distinction to make. If you mess that up, things can get weird sometimes. Either way, it gives it the events, the sale event. Hey, we created a sale record here. All right, cool. Let's start processing this. From there, it updates the inventory software, says, hey, this package that we reserved has now been claimed. It's good. Let's go. And this is important too. In these scenarios, you kind of have to reserve the package for X amount of time, assuming the sales goes through. So if they don't make the sale in a certain amount of time, the package then or the inventory becomes available again. That's important for if there was, say, like a bug that crashed this thing. You wouldn't want a bunch of your inventory being locked up. Make your platforms resilient. That's exactly what I do for a living. Then it tells the email service to send out emails, which it then sends out emails to everybody that needs to know that there was a package, and a thank you email to the customer. And then it finishes processing that event and asks SQS for the next event, to which SQS happily gives the next event, which hopefully is another sale. Congrats. All right, so that is basically Event-Driven Architecture 101. It's the basics. The next step is to use something more robust like Kinesis, which I will get into in another video. Originally, I was going to put it in this video, but I've decided this video has gone on long enough, so we'll make it a two-parter. That'll be in the next video. With that said, I have Terraform scripts that should help you guys set this stuff up. Actually, I've got more for the Terraform because, again, that's the more advanced option that does a lot of really cool stuff. But I will link that in the show notes. If you like this, like, comment, subscribe. If you disagree with my explanations or have any questions or whatever, feel free to comment. Happy to respond to those. I always like your comments. With that said, I'm Matt with Schematical. Have a great day.